Hey there everybody, I am here to explain why my Lexus LS400 died on the road yesterday and what I'm doing to fix it. Here it is. This is a 96, so it's a UCF 20 or second generation. It basically, while I was driving it back, decided to sputter out and die. It kind of sounded like it was misfiring, and then it kind of got worse when I tried to give it a little bit of gas to accelerate. And that's pretty much it. Just kind of died, and I coasted off to the side of the road. Did some basic checks. Unfortunately, I did not bring my ratchet set or scan tool with me because it was in the Miata over here. Thanks to the factory service manual and a few other folks on YouTube, I'll link the videos I checked out in the description for reference. I came up with a few things that we can try. Obviously, the classic things to check for are fuel, spark, air, timing, and compression. So starting with fuel, I think I may have found something already. So here's the front of the car. There are two lines here near the dipstick. This hard line down here is the fuel return line. When I pulled that line off, actually no fuel came out, surprisingly. So the car had been sitting overnight, so I guess I didn't expect a lot of fuel pressure, but I expected even just a tiny bit of fuel to come out, but pretty much nothing did. So I then took the rubber side of the return line and hooked it up to this empty 1 liter container. And down here, there was just a tiny bit of brake fluid from a prior job. I tried to empty it out as best as I could, but basically what I did is once I put this rubber line in, I then cranked the car. So this is a crank no start condition. The car cranks very easily but does not start. So I cranked the engine for a solid 10 seconds and still no fuel is coming out of that return line. That leads me to believe that fuel is not getting to the engine or coming from the engine to allow it to start properly. Another thing that's interesting is that no codes showed up in the engine computer when I connected the scan tool to it this morning. I had thought that when I was trying to start it a few times on the side of the road after it had sputtered out and died, it started briefly for maybe about 1 or 2 seconds, and then, obviously was kind of bucking probably from not getting fuel, and then it died again. I thought that would allow for it to throw a code, but there are still no codes in the engine computer after checking. So I think we're going to go ahead and take the back seat out and see if it's the fuel pump and or the electricity going to the fuel pump. One thing I haven't checked yet, fuel related, before we start tearing the back seat apart is whether we can hear the fuel pump working. Hey there, future Alex here. So it turns out this step in the process I did not have to do. I did not have to listen for the fuel pump when the car was in accessory mode. And that is because with the 1UZ engine, the non-VVTi model specifically, and for the UCF 20 cars, which includes 96, the fuel pump does not prime in this configuration. It actually only starts getting current when you're actually trying to start the car. So listening for the fuel pump, whether it be through the fuel door with the cap taken off, like the gas cap, or through the back seat, is pretty much pointless. So I figured that out later on, but just wanted to mention it here. Yeah, nothing. And I think we're just going to crank it for about 10 to 15 more seconds and see if we get any more fuel out. Here we go. All right, we're starting to slow down. I don't want to drain the battery too much. Took the key out. That's the steering wheel going back in. Let's see if we got any fuel. Yep, that's just the leftover brake fluid. There's nothing in this container. So I went ahead and put this fuel line back on. As you can see, it's just one of these squeeze clamps. You move that back. You try your best to break the seal without obviously damaging the hose. I just used a couple of picks to get into the hose without damaging it and kind of work my way around the seal. I used some needle nose pliers to kind of help loosen it by like not gripping super hard and just kind of rotating the hose gently. And then these hose style pliers are also kind of helpful for doing the same kind of thing. And then just kind of getting my fingers up in the edge of the seal to get it out there. So I've pushed that back in. Another couple things I checked were, here's one of the fuse panels, and here's the map for which fuses are which. The two EFI smaller fuses, I believe the first one that's EFI number 2 right there, and then EFI number 1 is this 20 amp fuse. So I checked those both and they were both good.
So in addition to checking those fuses, I would also check the 2 related relays. The big green square relay that you saw was the main EFI, or electronic fuel injection relay. And then there's also the one right next to it to the right, says CIROPN. That means circuit opening relay. That's connected to a fuel pump resistor. You'll want to check those 2 relays. And you can do that by putting your fingers on both of them and then getting your ear up real close to them, and then having someone else turn the car to accessory mode. You'll probably hear the main relay first, and then you'll hear the circuit opening relay a few seconds after that. And the reason why is the 4 signals that you need in order to open the actual circuit to the fuel pump before you start cranking the car, and I'll describe that later in the video.
When you are done testing your fuses, your relay, and listening to the pump from the gas door, please disconnect your battery. You don't want any fuel being lit on fire from electricity. So yeah, please disconnect the negative terminal of your battery before you do any more work. All right, so here in the back seat, if what I am seeing is right from the internet, there's basically just 2 clips, one here and then one on the other side. You basically get your hand under there and then pull up, and this sheet should lift up, and there's like hooks here that connect it to this part of the seat. You just kind of lean it all the way up until it comes out, and then you can kind of push it forward and out of the car. To get the top half of the seat, you gotta undo the belts because they're attached to the back of the seat. There's a 14 here, a 14 for this belt. Underneath this flap, there's a 12 millimeter. Up here in the middle, beneath this leather strap, I don't want to grab it with a dirty glove. There is, I think, a 12 back there. And underneath this flap, there's another 12. And then right here, there is a 14. And 2 more 12s on the ends here, right where these little cushions are. You can push these in, take these headrests out, and behind here are, I think, 2 12s, one here and then one on the other side. If you still have these seatbelt holders on the back of the rear seats, you can stick a pick into this hole and pry this way to get this clip out. So I noticed in some of the videos on the first gen Lexus models that there's like there's padding here, obviously, because the fuel tank is right behind this rear seat. This one, this is a 96 second gen. It had like rubber with like some fire shielding behind it, and there's just 2 plastic clips. Flathead will work great. One right here and then one over here on the other side right behind this seat belt. Once you get those 2 out, you can just pull it down and then it'll come all the way out. Those are the only things attaching it. And then to get the cover off to this side of the fuel pump, it looks like there's a cutout right here where you could put a flathead or a trim tool. I would say a trim tool would be more delicate. Once you've peeled that off, this stuff is pretty sticky, so you may deform the disc a little bit. I'd say just be gentle and take your time with it to keep as much of the adhesive on as you can. Once you got it off, though, again, it's a bunch of 8mm bolts again. My fuel tank is a little bit over half full, so in anticipation of some fuel coming out, I've got a bucket here just in case. I would do it regardless of the fuel level. You have to do both the rear seat and the trunk liner because the connector is behind the trunk liner. For this trunk liner, it's super simple. You can pop this out with a flathead, or I would actually probably prefer plastic trim tools so that you don't break any plastic. And then there's a connector connecting in this way. It's a squeeze clamp, squeeze, pull out. Then if you need a little bit of extra room, you can get these two plastic clips here, again with a flathead, prying and patience. And then this should actually, you should be able to remove the whole thing out of the car if you want extra room and not have to mess with it when you're dealing with the fuel pump. This car has about 171,000 miles on it. So, and from what I can tell with how tight that adhesive is, this is the original fuel pump. So 30 years is super great for one fuel pump. Now that we're testing the connectors at the back, behind that trunk liner, we can reconnect the battery for that test, after which we will disconnect the battery again. It looks like this green wire here on the top is what's going to the fuel pump. Right here at the top, you can just push that tab all the way on the right with a flathead and it should pop out. If you need to slide this base off, similar kind of thing, you can put that flathead near that tab on the left and then you can slide it to the right and it'll come off. It is pretty simple, actually. It just has two pins. The wires here, you can see that there's a green wire right there, and then right behind it is a black wire. So again, that's your green power and black ground wire. So I ran these two test leads on my multimeter into that connection, and then had someone turn the car to accessory mode several times, and there was still no voltage coming to that connector.
All right. Future Alex is back to both explain some mistakes I made and explain what I said I was going to talk about earlier on in the video. So the way this fuel system works is a little bit different than what I expected. First off, the voltage is not supplied to the fuel pump from the battery until the car is actually cranking. The fuel pump doesn't prime. That's not the way this fuel system works. So when I was back there testing the connector, at first I was testing it in accessory mode where there wasn't any cranking of the engine happening. I then learned later, after reading the factory service manual and the helpful advice from Cartoon and Z, his channel is on YouTube. He's got a ton of great 1UZ resources. Again, you need to test the connector when the car is actually cranking. So after a little bit, I went back, had my partner crank the engine while I was testing the voltage to the connector with a multimeter, and I was then getting voltage to the connector. So the car was supplying power, meaning the circuit opening relay was working, and all the signals that the car was looking for were actually present. But before that, before I figured that out, I was like, oh no, it might not be the fuel pump and it might be something else. So I need to check the other four conditions. And I started with timing because I had previously done a timing belt job on the car a few months ago, obviously, like I explained earlier in the video. So I'm going to include the footage here for me checking timing because I think it's an important step. I ended up not needing to move on to compression, air, and spark, because it turns out that I believe it's the fuel pump because of that test. There's also one additional test that I run later on in the video. It's a resistance test that I haven't seen on a forum or anywhere. It's only in the factory service manual, and you can literally test resistance to the connector. And if it's above a certain value at a certain temperature, you can then deem that the fuel pump is bad.
So in order to check correct timing, I removed the engine cover, the air intake system, the camshaft gear covers, and the fan. And here we are in the engine bay. To take all that stuff apart, it's pretty much 10 and 12 millimeters all the way down, the 12s being on the fan right there. Stick a 22 millimeter down there with a pretty long ratchet or breaker bar and turn it until the engine is at top dead center. You can see that right there. My mark is right on the 0. And with these covers off, you can obviously see right here, the notch right in the middle of the screen is lining up with the notch there. It might not look like it right there on camera, but I went ahead and double checked. There's also a marking here on the back. As you can see, that lines up. And then the same on the other camshaft. This one's kind of harder to see, but the marking is back there and it does match up. So we're looking at timing being okay. I also checked the tightness of the belt, at least with what I could with just these covers off, and we seem to be fine there. In order to get this off, obviously there's a rubber gasket, seal here, so you're going to have to pry against this sheet metal to get it off. I ended up using a long flathead like this, and you'll probably end up putting at least one dent into this circle. I would say just pry pretty hard on one side with a good amount of pressure. That way you only put one dent in it. Then this comes out, and looks like at more than half a tank we're still good. No fuel came out. Not only that, these two clamps and this hose seem to be in perfect shape. The rubber might be dry. We'll figure that out when we end up taking the hose off, but I'm assuming the fuel pump is sitting right down there. So all that's left are these three what looks like 10mm bolts, getting this hose pushed down far enough to get the pump out. All right, it's been a week. I'm gonna go pick up the fuel pump now. It's finally ready. And I drove to pick it up in the Mazda Speed. We're doing good so far at 93,500 miles. Okay, we're gonna run the resistance test, even though I'm pretty sure it's the fuel pump, just to make 200% sure. The values that we're looking for are with an ohm meter. A multimeter has an ohm meter on it. We're gonna look for 0.2 to 3 ohms of resistance at the connector that is on the fuel pump side. If we see anything higher than that, we again know the fuel pump is bad. This multimeter has a lowest max setting of 200 ohms. I have a feeling that the reading we're getting is not showing up on this multimeter because it's not close enough to that max 200 for this one to pick it up. So we're just going to go ahead and replace it and see what that does. All right, we finally have the fuel pump out. I'm going to show you the process of replacing it with an OEM fuel pump. So here it is. There's two what looks like 8mm bolts here. There's your green power wire. There's your black ground wire. I believe we're undoing both, obviously. There's another hose down here with the same setup as the hose on the top. So just undo those hose clamps, pull that hose out. This pump should come out of its bracket with the fuel filter. And there's a clip, I believe, either holding the fuel filter or the pump into place. And these are the part numbers you need. 23221 50020 for the fuel pump itself. For the fuel pump clip, it's 23219 03010. And then for the filter itself, it's 23217 50020. The one part I forgot to get was the gasket that goes around the fuel pump cover. I'll either replace it later or just check the shape of it and keep it as it is for now. All right, we got the new fuel pump in, reconnected everything, and we're gonna give it a start and see what happens. Well, it better be a start. It's running! Another 1UZ back on the road. Woo! Put her back together and we are all set now. If there's anything else you want to know about this whole thing, it took a week for most of it. Most of it obviously just being waiting on the part. But it's running again. I'm real happy about that. You guys want to see more? Like the video, leave a comment, subscribe if you want to see more Lexus stuff, and I will see you all in future videos. Bye-bye.